Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, Season 1, Episode 10, Gladiator. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So the episode begins with Hercules and Aeolus walking on the road, and Aeolus is worried that he's a has-been because he found a gray hair, and he cares about that kind of thing. And they happen to run into a woman being accosted by bandits. And so they interfere. She runs away while they're fighting. Further down the road, they find her, and her wagon has lost a wheel. And as they're helping her change the wheel, she explains that she's heading basically home to where her husband is because he's been illegally enslaved, because as Hercules notes, he had already abolished slavery in the area years ago, but apparently the wealthy man that's in charge of the region is wealthy enough to kind of get away with breaking the laws, and so he has illegally enslaved his prisoners and turned them into gladiators. Her husband is one of them, and he was promised freedom, but they went back on their word, and then they banished her and his son, whom he had never gotten the opportunity to meet, and that is why she is heading back now to let him see his son. But obviously, she would be captured because she has been banished, so Hercules tells her to go to an inn and wait for them. They'll send for her once they free her husband, and he and Aeolus continue on to, I think it was a Paphos. Anyways, when they arrive, they reach a toll bridge and are basically told if they don't pay the toll, they'll be taken as prisoners, and that suits their purposes because they, of course, are trying to find a prisoner. And so they then are brought in. Hercules asks who Gladius is. Anybody know him? And the other prisoners are all like, don't know who that is. Why are you looking for him? And Hercules is like, that's my business, not telling them. And then basically is informed by the other prisoners that even though his sentence was 30 days, that most of them have been in there far longer than what they were sentenced to. And it's an arbitrary number, and they're there for life. They then work in the quarry the next day, and that's when Hercules finds out who Gladius is. And so on the way back from the quarry, he approaches Gladius and is like, I have a message from your wife. And Gladius gets like really upset at him and doesn't listen at all. And Hercules is very confused by this. However, he does end up learning from Gladius's best friend that actually he was lied to, and when they banished his wife and son, they actually told him that they both died in childbirth. So he thinks she's dead and that Hercules is playing a cruel joke on him by saying he has a message from her. Anyways, the games start to become boring to the wealthy man's wife, and so instead of them fighting animals, it changes to them fighting each other. But Hercules, of course, refuses to kill his opponent, and then the wife is very attracted by this, so she sends for Hercules to come to her room. He, of course, rejects her. He then is sent back, and she's angry enough that the next time when Gladius's best friend fights in his place and refuses to kill his opponent, she orders both of them to be killed, which of course devastates Gladius because like this is his bestie who has now been killed in cold blood. And then Hercules is like, you know what? Like, we can kill the guards. We can kill this person. Like, you're strong. You're a fighter. You've been doing all this fighting. Your wife and son are alive. Let's get out of here. However, unbeknownst to them, because they've been in prison, instead of waiting at the end like she was told to, his wife decided to try to sneak in, got caught, and so when Hercules and Gladius are put to fight each other, Aeolus is taken prisoner or hostage, and so is Felicita. Yeah, Felicita, I think is her name. And they're basically told, like, if you refuse to kill each other and fight, we are going to punish these two instead, you know. And luckily, Hercules lets himself lose, but then Gladius realizes that, they lied to him once. They may be lying to him again. as Hercules told him while they were fighting, and so he then turns on the guards instead, and Hercules then turns on the guards. They manage to defeat the guards, which then allows them to capture the wealthy man and his wife, and basically they then decree that they're going into self-exile and have abolished slavery in the land again, even though it had already been so. And all the prisoners, of course, got to go free, and Gladius and his wife and son are reunited, basically a happy ending once again. And so now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, we will now rank the episode. As always, we'll start with our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So, we start with our single episode supporting character introductions, and honestly, there were a lot that were in this episode. Pretty much everybody got lines, everybody got like a moment to kind of shine, so as opposed to in some cases where there are some named characters that just are in there for a flash in the pan, this one, because it's a concentrated setting, they all kind of had enough screen time that I felt they were worth a point. So we have 1 point for Menace Maximus, who is, of course, the wealthy man who owns it, his wife Postera. Then we have Gladius and Felicita. Ludus is Gladius's best friend. Turcos and Skoros are two other gladiators. Spagos is the cook, who isn't a gladiator because he's older, but does all the meals and is the one who narrates what's happening out in the arena through a window to all the other people who are in their cages. And then Bellicus is the head guard, who of course is going around being a jackass. So that is 9 points right there just with those single episode characters. However, nothing really else applied on the positive side. Which brings us then to the negative messaging or behavior, which of course is turning prisoners into slaves illegally. Like, obviously, gladiators existed historically, and it was definitely legal historically. However, in this particular case, this region, slavery was abolished. That means the fact that he is keeping slaves is illegal, and therefore negative messaging or behavior. Minus 2 points, but that still leaves it with a 7 out of 10. And that then brings our list so far to in first, The Wrong Path, As Darkness Falls, The Warrior Princess, Pride Comes Before a Brawl, The Road to Caledon. This episode comes in 6th place, Gladiator. Then we have The March to Freedom, Ares, The Festival of Dionysus, and in 10th, Eye of the Beholder. Now, my personal feelings on this episode was that I was frustrated. Honestly, when it started, I thought them getting like kidnapped into prison would be pretty funny, and I thought it was a cool concept. But then like he just kept letting himself get beat up. He let himself like be lashed. He let himself almost be defeated. He just like kept being very passive. And he was passive because he was trying to do the mental game of let's convince these prisoners to, you know, get out of their mindset of being prisoners slash slaves and like earn their freedom, try to convince them. But like the result of that is that he ends up like being really passive about all of the physical things that are coming his way. But in the end, it does work out. He does manage to convince Gladius, after almost letting him beat him up and kill him, to fight for his freedom. Then they do, and they all get to go out, and he even stops them from taking revenge on the guards because their freedom is better than revenge. And it does have a nice ending, but again, it frustrated me a lot of how it kind of dragged on, how, it took so long, how the one person he did manage to convince, Ludius, is the one who ended up dying and being killed because he followed Hercules' example and said he didn't want to kill the person he was fighting when he fought on Gladius's behalf. And it's like, well, that sucked because I liked him. I didn't want him to die either. And I just felt like, of all the episodes that we've had so far, this one really didn't live up to my expectations as well as the others did. wasn't necessarily my personal cup of tea. Though, like I said, the concept, at least originally, I did like it, but I would have liked it better if, he got into the prison, he found Gladius, then he broke out of the prison, and they had this fun action-packed like battle to get out, and then, reunite wife and husband with their child. Like I thought that would have been a more fun episode to watch. And though they do get reunited at the end, like seriously, she was a little bit when you meet a hero and he says, "Wait at the inn, I'm going to save somebody." Don't make his job harder by not listening. Like just wait at the inn. It's not that hard. But she couldn't do it. And I was like, "Okay, don't really think much of you here." Um but like I said, like there was some things that were good, some that were not. It was entertaining, but also frustrating, a little bit slow paced. Didn't really like the passiveness of Hercules in the case of this particular episode, and so I only gave it a 4 out of 10, which brings the personal ranking list to: in first, March to Freedom, The Warrior Princess, As Darkness Falls, Eye of the Beholder, Pride Comes Before a Brawl, The Festival of Dionysus, Ares, The Wrong Path, Gladiator, and then in 10th we have The Road to Caledon. Which brings us now to our mostly objective ranking, which has miraculously synced up, and both the mostly objective ranking and the personal ranking currently have 67 points out of a possible 130. So with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Hercules: The Legendary Journeys, Season 1, Episode 10, Gladiator. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.